Good evening, everyone. Welcome to those at home watching us on TV this evening. Welcome to the May 2nd meeting of Board of Selectmen. Mr. Springett and Mrs. Hunter were just mentioning that this is my second to last chairman's meeting. It has been a rather eventful year.
A lot of applause from the crowd.
Yeah, a lot of applause from the crowd. Before we begin this evening,
A lot of people came to the applause.
God, it's going to be so much easier when it's in the other side. Special thanks this evening from the Board of Selectmen to all of those that participated in the townwide cleanup for the past month. On Saturday, we were at the transfer station with Chris Paulson, members of the recycling committee, Carol Lisbon. We had a great time, lots of donuts, lots of coffee,
Lots of wind.
lots of wind,
Lot
hot
of
chocolate.
donuts.
Yes, lots of donuts. So thank everyone. We had a record of 160 bags. It was 160 bags that we accumulated. So it was a massive effort. So thank everybody who participated, and for everyone at home who pitched in. No pun intended. It was a great effort.
We met some good people.
We met good people. Yeah, it's always a great event. You're always amazed at how many people you get to see. We are looking forward to town meeting on Monday at 7 o'clock. We have a brand new visible portable sign that we took delivery of this week, which hopefully will be deployed this weekend to remind everybody coming through Dover that town meeting is Monday at 7 o'clock at the Mudge Auditorium in the middle school. So, any other announcements that we need to make?
Open space. I'm not open space, but
The placeholder for the grant for open space for the MVP. What is Carl? Technically, what is the? We received the placeholder for the grant for MVP. What's the actual last week? What is the actual name of the grant, or what was the grant?
It's so MVP is Municipal Vulnerability Programming. Basically to help communities plan for the effects of climate change in a very broad sense. So we're obviously not a coastal community, so that's not an issue, but
we could wait.
But it's affecting our tree canopy, it's affecting insect population. It's, in our case, we're concerned about wells and making sure our public and private wells have sufficient water. So we'll start the initial planning process next week on that. Staff is meeting with the Health Department.
Great, well, thank you. Yeah, Jerry Clark and the Board of Health, and there were a number of people involved in it. So a thank you from the Board of Selectmen to those involved. Additionally, we should also extend a thanks to Denise Garlick, our representative, who has submitted on behalf of the town a request for funding for ambulance, for our,
For a lift.
For a lift.
Yeah.
a lift for the ambulance.
Yep.
So we're hopeful that that will see the funding from next year. So to Denise Garlick and to her staff, thank you very much. Our first order of business tonight is to award highway bids. Mr. Blackman?
Mr. Chairman, so asking the board to approve the award of 4 different highway bids. Roadway pavement markings is the first. Catch basin cleaning is the second. Bituminous concrete in place, which is asphalt for the streets, is third. And the last is a new one we haven't done for a while, asphalt rubber surface treatment. Most departments refer to this as chip seal. It's a combination of a liquid asphalt and a very small stone. that you spray down the liquid asphalt, you put on the stone, it seals the road, seals the cracks, and provides a new wearing surface. Generally is good for about 7 years to extend the life of the road. And there's, I know, one street in particular that Ms. Hunter
Wilson
brought to our attention that we think it may be an appropriate use there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great solution. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to begin that process, and I think the residents in Wilsondale and the Strawberry Hill neighborhood will be really happy with it. So let's.
They're gonna use Wilsondale.
Yes.
Well, that's the plan. The highway superintendent's going to meet with the neighbors first to talk to them about it, because it's something that you haven't seen here in Dover. It's used in many other communities, but so there's no surprises. Explain to them how, what happens when you put it down. It's messy when it goes down, because you put down a lot of after the asphalt goes down, you put down a lot of the stone, and that which doesn't stick, you then go a week later and you sweep it up, but it looks initially like there's a lot of extra material, but that's done intentionally.
Okay.
So he just wants to meet with them, explain to them how it works, how it would be applied, that it will have a different sound and feel to it. It's a rougher surface.
Are there roads in neighboring towns that they could go look at?
Wellesley has
May
them.
have,
Yeah, I know when I worked in Weston, we did it.
okay.
It's, a number of towns have used it. We could probably ask the company, All States Asphalt, where they've done it around here, and they could give us some places to look at.
So I'll accept a motion, move to award the bid for the roadway pavement marking Highway Safety Systems, Inc. Move to award the bid for the catch basin cleaning to BMC Corporation, Inc. Move to award the bid for bituminous concrete in place to LaRusso Corporation. Move to award the bid for asphalt rubber surface treatment to Allstate Asphalt.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Next order of business is to accept a gift to the Cemetery Commission.
The trees.
Mr. Chairman, one of our residents, Doug Smith, would like to donate trees to be planted along the boundary line between his property and the highway and the Highland Cemetery. The value of the trees is between $3,000 and $5,000, and Mr. Smith is proposing to cover both the cost of purchasing the trees and the planting of those trees. And this requires acceptance by the board.
Great, thank you. Extend our thanks to Mr. Smith and his family. It sounds like something that is a win-win for all parties. You would think. Yeah. And accept a motion to accept the gift from Douglas Smith to the Cemetery Commission for the trees and their plantings valued between $3,000 and $5,000.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And again, thank you to the Smith family on behalf of the board and the town of Dover. Appointment. The Cultural Council is requesting that the board appoint Karen Ketterer to the council for a term ending June 30th, 2021. Accept the motion to appoint Karen to the Dover Cultural Council for the term ending June 30th, 2021. Any comment, Mr. Valente, or?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you, Karen, for volunteering your service. Disclosure of financial interest by the municipal employees. Mr. Valente, would you like
Mr. Chairman?
a summary?
Under state law, an employee can hold two positions for the town, but has to file a disclosure statement with the Board of Selectmen. And this is quite common, particularly in small towns. And in this case, this is an individual who teaches at the Chickering School, but also would like to be appointed as a call EMT within our fire department. So he has completed the disclosure statement, which is attached. And the fire chief is recommending that the board accept this and to allow the appointment of Ken Wadness to the call EMT position.
Great. For those of us that know Ken, can vouch that he's a great guy and will make a great addition to the department.
Ken's been at the school a while.
So he would be on call during the day then, while he's in Dover?
Probably not in his workday. He would
Okay.
probably be scheduled either for after school or weekends.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So accept a motion pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, 20, Subchapter F, the request to exempt Kenneth Wadness, interest in call emergency medical technician, EMT position, from the prohibition of the Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Subchapter 20, to authorize Ken Wadness to serve as a call EMT under the direction of the fire chief.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
But does he live in Dover?
I don't think so. Does Ken live in Dover?
I didn't think he did.
I don't think he does, but Carl, do you know?
I don't, no.
Presumably that's not one.
No, it's not.
No, just, yeah.
He lives,
Review and discussion of presentations and motions.
Okay.
Any items, Mr. Valenti, that we need to amend or
Have been amended, I guess.
have been amended? We would like to note to Article 26, Mr. Smith and warrant committees, slides and presentation. Other than noting them for the record, there's really no motion that we have to take, just to include them in the presentation for Article 26.
yes, and if, I don't know if the board want to discuss whether it will be offering a motion to amend Article 26. So in your packet is the first couple of pages is the presentation by the warrant committee. It's actually, the first page is 2 slides, and then I believe the second page is just their, I think it's just their backup numbers. And then there's a draft of, Mr. Chairman, your presentation on reserves. And then you had asked me to include the free cash analysis that I presented at your last meeting.
Right.
And then the third page of that analysis so then, yes, the last page of that analysis, Mr. Chairman, right, is, I think what you were looking at for to add to your presentation, it would
Yes.
compare the warrant committee's proposal and the selectmen's proposal.
Exactly. Thank you. So at warrant last night, the warrant committee discussed the process and the slides that they would use. I forwarded those slides to Mr. Valenti, who's included them in our package this evening. Our intent is Mr. Valenti and I will meet with members of warrant tomorrow. The hope is we want to streamline presentations from both warrant and the Board of Selectmen to get specifically to where we are different and where we are similar in our thinking of free cash uses. The Board of Selectmen are taking a longer, more gradual approach to reducing to the amount of money that we're suggesting and that we're proposing for the reduction to be used to reduce the tax rate. the selectmen's proposal will accomplish the effect over a period of 5 years, where the warrant committee is accomplishing their guidelines and what they want to proceed, or they want to propose as their solution in 2 years. So we are going to give where both sides are going to give their presentation within the time allowed. We are going to then show, the selectmen will show the difference on a structural basis over those period of years, specifically with the impact in the third and fourth year of giving back money, specific amounts of money, to the taxpayers this year and next year. Is there anything either of you would like to add to that, just in terms of our intent and our hope for the presentation as we're meeting tomorrow with warrant?
So this is a very complex issue, and for many people at town meeting, it may be the first time that they've really paid any attention to it, which, you know, it is what it is. And so it's really important in my mind to try and simplify what we're presenting.
Exactly.
And both of these presentations that I see don't really do that. And, you know, again, I think the most important message to deliver at town meeting, and ultimately it's the voters that are going to decide, whoever goes to town meeting, is that this committee was put together to try and stabilize the tax rate. And you can't stabilize it in 1 year. It's a multi-year process. And what's going to happen to everybody is simple. You know, year one, you're going to have a rebate against your taxes. Year two, we can't guarantee that that rebate is going to be the same as it is in year one. And so what that is going to do is it is going to create a dramatic increase in your tax rate year over year, because the starting point for the year in which you don't get the rebate is the tax without the rebate. And so I think, right, so I think you know, again, it's simple, and these numbers would be easy to understand, but don't necessarily reflect reality. But if your tax bill is $10,000 and the rebate is $1,000, in the year of the rebate, your tax bill will be $9,000. In the next year, if we don't have funds, if we can't give you a rebate, your starting point for your tax rate is, you know, you're going to go from 9 to 11. And so that jump is going to create a destabilization in your own, potentially, economics. And what we're trying to do is to decrease the increase in the tax rate over time. So, but, you know, I think that's the message, and it's up to the voters. You know, it may be beneficial for voters to get a rebate and then move on, but it's just important that citizens of Dover understand that this is a one-time rebate. And I think that's the message. You know, over time, we're trying to give back the same amount of money. It's just we're being more methodical, and that's what I thought this committee had agreed to. But, you know, because there are no guarantees. I look at 2-year projections from the Warren Committee. There's actually no guarantees that you're going to get 2.5% of turnbacks in the next year, because we've talked a lot about beginning to refine the inputs to the budget. So if we're doing a better job at projecting future growth and things like that, you're going to get less back in turnbacks.
Correct.
So this is just simply not sustainable. And if something isn't sustainable, it's going to impact citizens of Dover, because it's going to be more expensive in the year where you can't sustain the rebate. So that would be my message.
Correct.
I don't, I mean, I obviously agree. We've talked about this at the last 2 or 3
Right.
meetings. I think the thing that I always sort of, it comes back to me is the unintended consequences,
Right.
which is one of the reasons why we wanted to take, or recommend taking a much more gradual.
Baby steps.
Yeah, much more gradual approach. When I look at the data on free cash, it's really the last 3 years that have spiked. If you look at all of the previous years, most of them are around 15% or low, with a couple of around 18.
Right.
And, when something spikes like that, the last 3 years, my initial reaction is something happened, or something broke, or something in the way that we do this, has affected these numbers in a significant way. Maybe we haven't spent as much money out of free cash, as to fill the budget gap. All I'm saying is, to me, it's always a yellow flag, and I don't understand to this day why those last 3 years have jumped so much. So, with an unresolved issue in my mind, my training is be cautious. So it sort of also augments the idea that if we take a gradual approach and refine our budgeting and projecting techniques, understand the mechanics
And
of
see,
how
right, and
how
see
these
the
things happen.
impact of that refined approach.
That would be easy for me to,
Right.
accept. And then finally, and we've talked about this any number of times, there sort of is a blind eye to future known expenses. And there seems to be a blind eye to potential future expenses. And, and if you add in what we know from capital, if you add in what we think about around townhouse refurbishment, if you add in, we're going to be asking town residents in October to opine on whether or not they want to spend money on renovating Carroll or building new, and we're going to ask them to, opine on a budget amount. Those are all future spending that can impact these numbers, and they don't seem to be under consideration. And then, as I said a gazillion times, nobody's gotten into trouble by having too much cash reserves, just nobody.
Right,
And
but
there's no real downside to taking our time, going through it methodically, going through with together, doing the analytical exercises so that we can absolutely articulate what's going on and why clearly and simply, so everyone can have a shared understanding. That's enough.
right, I think another key point is we're not saying we shouldn't give back cash to citizens. I mean, we're not saying that.
No.
What we're saying is let's understand what the right amount is. And, many citizens will say, well, I've been in town for 25 years, I'm leaving soon, I want my money back, you've overtaxed me. And I think that's a very simplistic view, because those individuals that have been in town for 25 years that may be leaving next year or the year after, we have unfunded liabilities that were earned on their time.
Yes.
So, to make that statement is not really the answer. And, nobody's disagreeing that new capital projects should be bonded, because those will be enjoyed by the future citizens. But it's not one size fits all, and we really need to be cautious and make sure that liabilities that we know about right now are funded, that we understand why over the past 3 years more free cash has come back than expected. And I think we've identified areas where we can do a better job in budgeting, and I would expect to see the return to free cash decrease as we get better,
It will.
Right.
forecasting.
It will.
Right.
What I would add is, The genesis of the free cash committee last summer came out of this recognition of the free cash position and a strategic approach that needed to be formulated. One of the things that we did immediately was to identify our liabilities. Our liabilities dramatically exceed our free cash position, but what we did at that time is we allocated a period of years where we would begin to address that liability. So we came up with a 10-year period of time to address the unfunded OPEB liability at the regional level. So the intent was, and we began it, and you'll see it at the town meeting with our article to fund the unfunded liabilities, to set money aside consistently, strategically, periodically, but not necessarily guaranteeing year after year after year that we set the money aside. So we took a 10-year time frame on funding our unfunded liability. The intent of the board is to take the same methodical approach where we allow ourselves the runway to make the contributions that we need to make to the liabilities that we have to keep the tax rate at a stable rate, rather than giving back a lot of money in year 1 or 2, smooth that amount. So we also have reserves to, as Mr. Springett suggested, fund roofs, buildings, maintenance projects. We know we have schools that need new roofs. We know we have a building next door that's going to require money. How we do it, not simply taking the money in free cash and saying we're going to pay for all of these things out of free cash, but as Mrs. Hunter pointed out, and I have, and Mr. Springett have, if we have the money in free cash, our borrowing cost for anything that we decide to borrow against is going to be less. We will have a much favorable position over the period of the course of any loans that we decide to bond for these projects. So borrowing will be a part of our financial future, as will the free cash and our cash reserves. Our intent is to make sure that we do not paint ourselves in a corner or have unintended consequences in the 3rd and 4th year. So,
And, by having a cash reserves, it gives you a little bit more flexibility about what, if and when you want to fund.
right.
Hybrid model. I mean, it's just having it just opens up the door to different ways of doing things. And it needs to be considered. We that sort of future look projections needs to be baked into the analysis so that residents understand the intent and how it works through time. Because we all, basically, I think we want the same things. We want stable tax rate. We don't want to be taxing more than we need. And then we want to have enough cash reserves. Again, we're at the high point of an economic cycle.
Right. We know it's going to go down.
We know it's not going to last.
Right. The theme that the board has proposed consistently is consistency. We want to maintain consistency in our approach. Be prudent, be methodical, be mindful, which we know we've demonstrated, that we have listened to our citizens and we want to stabilize the rate, but we want to do it in a methodical, consistent manner. We'll meet tomorrow. Mr. Valente and I will meet with members of Warrant. The purpose of the meeting is to make sure that we are all on the same page and that there is not a lot of redundancy in presentations on Monday evening. We want to keep it as efficient and streamlined as we possibly can, because we know that functionally it has to be the last order of business in town meeting. And as Mrs. Hunter alluded to earlier, this is a complicated process.
Subject.
Process. Updates. Rail trail.
I have gone back and forth trying to set up a meeting with the Friends of the Dover Greenway to go over budgets, but I dropped the ball at the end of the week, so I will circle back with them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Springett?
Not a lot's happened since last week.
You didn't get page 1 coverage again this Thursday? You got page 1 coverage last Thursday, which was very well done.
So really, the only thing that's happened is we had a meeting, we actually had a meeting this morning, a subgroup, to go through our slide presentation deck and finalize it so that we can use that as a point of distribution. It'll be, there is it's not called a website, it's called like a web page or a web link that this information is going to be, there. And we just wanted to make sure that before it goes out, that everybody was happy with it. There'll be a meeting tomorrow, again, a subgroup with the stakeholders, and the idea there is get people together, sort of go through the mission, go through the objectives, go through the groups that they represent, and tee it up. I mean, as I've said, I think from the get-go, the critical matter, the critical point of this initiative is for the stakeholders to engage with and inform their constituencies in the broad sense so that we can get the information we need to make a solid presentation in the fall. But the campaign is going to be in their hands. The committee has done the work it can do to look at the renovation options, look at what's considered, look at the cost. That's done. We've looked at 15 towns, we have the information, we know what they do, we know how they work, et cetera, et cetera. That's done. Now it's a matter of going out and having the discussions with the residents. This is the make it or break it effort.
Thank you. That has been a process, a long process. Mrs. Hunter, update for interviews for our town administrator position?
So the town administrator search committee met at the beginning of the week, and we are in the process of vetting 2 candidates, which we believe we will bring forward and recommend to the Board of Selectmen for interviewing. In the meantime, given that you and Mr. Springett have conflicting schedules for the month of May.
Busy guys, right?
I thought it might be prudent to
Graduation season.
Right, to try and hold certain dates that I can then go back and try and coordinate interview schedules. One of the things the search committee wanted to do, and I think we had talked about as well, was bringing candidates to the townhouse to meet with department heads and also to meet with the chairman of the various independent committees. That day does not need the selectmen to be present, and Mr. Valente has volunteered to help me set the schedule for that day. So Mr. Valente and I will work on picking 2 days and bringing candidates back. It would probably be half a day, and then we'd also have an opportunity for citizens to come in and meet the potential candidates. The other thing we need to try and nail a date down for is the Board of Selectmen's interviewing of the candidates, which will need to be at a regular meeting. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to confirm with both of you that potential days to do this may be Saturday, May the 11th, Saturday, May the 18th, and Tuesday, May the 21st.
Okay, so the 18th I'm in New York.
Okay, so the 18th doesn't work, so it's the 11th or the 21st?
Right.
The
Okay.
11th I'm in Iowa.
You're in
And
Iowa?
I could do the 11th
Okay.
for the one-on-one.
Okay, so the only day that works is the 21st, or it would have to be the 28th, but I would prefer to do it the 21st. So I will go and coordinate schedules and then work with the chair of the committee and Mr. Valente on dates to bring the candidates in and then,
So right now, tentatively the 21st.
correct.
Okay.
And in the evening.
Yep, okay, yep.
And we'll have to interview both candidates on the same evening, so we'll have to coordinate that.
Is that meeting is not necessarily televised, that meeting?
It is a televised meeting.
Okay.
And I will work, as I'm trying to coordinate this, if there are specific questions that you think you would like to ask these candidates, if you could send them to me, so then that way I can pull them all together, because we'll only have about 45 minutes to an hour, so we need to make sure that we have enough time
Yeah.
for the questions that we need.
We'll get resumes, we could,
I will, as soon as they are going through
yeah, right,
a process right now, and as
Yes.
soon as that process is
screening,
complete,
whatever, yeah.
I will, a reference check process, I will then, at that point, they become public, the candidacy becomes public, and I will provide resumes.
So for those of you that are following this dialogue along at home, the 6th is our town meeting.
Yep.
The 20th is our election.
And the 21st,
And the 21st will be
an
a
interview.
interview. And the 21st, as the interview, would be the first day that Mrs. Hunter would be having her second
that would be
term
our-
as her chairman of the board, part 2. So
So she buys the donuts.
she buys the donuts.
This is an evening meeting, and Mr. Jeffries is buying us gifts.
Mr. Jeffries will come gladly
With
bearing gifts. The bruises on both sides of his body will be thanking.
We'll be starting to
Yeah.
heal.
So, thank you.
Just keep in mind, I'm delicate, so.
The free cash, with regards to free cash, the only thing I would add to that is Mr. Smith, who will be, on behalf of the warrant, giving the warrants presentation at town meeting, will be meeting with Mr. Valente and I tomorrow, and we will be, as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the meeting is to gain as much efficiencies as we can with the 2 proposals and the proposed amendment that the Board of Selectmen will be proposing after the motion, after the vote on Article 26,
After the acceptance of the motion.
at the acceptance of the motion. Thank you. Anything else to add? Nothing else on my end from that. Updates? Town updates.
Mr. Chairman, just one update for the board this evening, just to follow up with you on the ransomware attack that we had on the town's network this past week. I received a call on Sunday from a staff person who was doing some work and found that couldn't get into any of his network drives over the weekend. So I put a call into our IT person to start looking into it, and what we found is that sometime on Sunday we were hit with ransomware. Basically, it started to impact all of our shared drives on our network, so you couldn't get into the shared drives at all. We were able to both shut down our system, so it only did limited damage, and because we have backups that we do every 15 minutes, and those backups are kept not on our own servers, but on private servers, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, we're pretty confident that any damage that was done to our electronic records that we could restore and really weren't going to lose anything. But it did take us down most of Monday. We were offline, and parts of Tuesday, which right now doesn't sound like very long, but we've all realized here that how much we just do every bit of work using your computer.
Right.
Everything from just contacting using email to all the files that we use. So it put the staff on sort of hold for their normal work and leading right up to town meeting, which just also wasn't the best timing. But At the end of the day, I'm not aware that we lost any data. And the worst of the impact seems to be on just one office that came back online today. We had to completely take down a couple of desktop units that had the bulk of the infection from the ransomware. And those will have to just be dealt with separately. But other units have been scanned by our staff and, again, look like they're clean. Our IT director, Diana, did a fabulous job on this. When I talked to her on Sunday, she was out of state, and she started working on it right away, working with the company that provides backup to us on IT and contacting them. And that was what she was doing all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and right through today was working on this. Retrofit, the company that we work with, was also terrific, and they had an individual here on site all day yesterday, going through the individual network drives and network computers to make sure they were clean. So we were very pleased with that. And coincidentally, on Monday, Mr. Spriggett and I, for a different reason, were meeting with Retrofit, talking to them about the town meeting article that the board has proposed. And so they were, one, very aware of what was going on, why it was going on, and had some good advice for us on things we should consider going forward to further protect our network, that we may want to do right away. You know, I know it's at the end of the fiscal year, but they gave us a couple of ideas of things that would allow them to monitor individual desktop units continuously, so that if a particular unit, as an example, started sending out hundreds of emails because it got infected with malware, they could identify that right away and shut down that desktop.
Do you anticipate we'll need any type of transfer to address capital to address this?
I don't know yet. I'm working with Diana on what we may have available in the budget as is, but I think it would be well, if we need a transfer, it'd be well worth the money.
So we were getting live
Request that.
updates on Monday from, from the guys who are actually doing the.
It
on
just
top of
shows
it.
you how vulnerable your systems are,
Yeah.
and that you really, you know, in this day and age, you need to try and protect yourself
Well,
as best as you can.
yeah, that's right. I mean, there is vulnerability, and, you know, we have to recognize that, you know, we are a small
Right.
Entity, yeah. Very.
And, you know, as the world gets more complex, as the systems get more integrated, as we rely more and more on technology to do things, we're going to have to step up our game. And of course, that's why we're asking for
Asking
that.
for that.
Right.
Great.
So, is the financial system up? The accounting system? Because they seem to be struggling.
That came up yesterday. KVS, I believe, came back up yesterday, yes.
Really?
And the new one that we're bringing online was never impacted because that lives on the cloud.
Right.
Right.
So we're actually continue to be able to do the work towards the new system, the Vadar system.
So it was 2 days of work on the new system, because you couldn't work
Yeah,
on the old
that's right.
system.
That's great.
So
Thank you.
I just have one other, it's been a while, and obviously people have been busy, but Saddle Ridge, have we ever moved on that? The dog issue with the Saddle Ridge folks?
It's now up to the neighbors. So we finished our discussions and work with the neighbors, so it's now up to them whether they want to
Pursue it here?
pursue it with the Board of Selectmen, the dog complaint. And I haven't heard anything from them in 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then what about the doggy dates? There was the Board of us,
That
board
hearing was
meetings?
continued.
okay.
May
There-
28th.
Yeah, I know they were trying to get a date. They had continued to a specific date that there was then a conflict on, so
Okay.
I haven't heard if they've firmed up that date to continue that hearing.
We, I simply don't recall the name. We interviewed 2 firms on Monday. Retrofit was one, and the other was
Presidio.
And so Carl and I have talked with 3 other firms, in addition to NBI, who Carl hadn't talked to at all. So now we've covered 4 potential providers. And I'll let Carl, speak from his perspective. Or we're going to go through it, or what's the next step?
Well, next step is Monday. Hopefully that town meeting
Yeah,
will provide the funding.
Next step is hopefully getting the
Then I'm going to Iowa.
appropriations.
Well, I was impressed with Retrofit. They are also on the state contract state bid list, so we could just negotiate a contract with them. I don't know Marino's firm.
Yeah, they're on this contract.
If they're on it too, but if they are, you'd be in the same position, which would really facilitate moving ahead with this project, not to go through a formal invitation for our RFP for them.
And it was, and one of the firms I think we threw them a little bit of a curve. I think they grew up with network infrastructure support, and sort of how we framed the issue was more around, sort of a strategic consulting sort of look. And we had great conversation with those guys, and they're going to go talk to their national teams to see if they have providers who could react to that sort of first phase, sort of the analysis, assessments phase. But I think they were all pretty solid firms. We'll have to find a way to come to a decision, should we get the money.
Well, we're on the subject of money. At Warrant last night, we discussed, Warrant has been made aware of several holes that HOLD process.
Not the
Not the-
HOLE.
Yeah, exactly.
That too.
That during the review, during the articles that require a vote on spending on specific items, whether it's capital or human capital, the moderator will read through the list, and as he's reading through the list, anybody in attendance can ask an item to be held. So an audience participating member will just say the word hold, and that particular item will be held for review. The other items that are not asked for to be held are assumed to have been passed and will be, once the motion is made, will be voted on. So the Board of Selectmen are prepared for every item, and we are, although we're not expecting, we are prepared for any item that anyone asks to be held for consideration. We'd be happy
For an
to
explanation.
provide explanation, thank you, yeah, on those items. So, I'm assuming all the holes will be on items that you.
Not just going to ask.
So we should, if there is a hold on the selectmen's budget, because we do have
New
a
items.
new head in there.
Yep.
Who is going to respond?
Depending, well, we should think about I'm assuming there's gonna be lots of lively debate on free cash, lots of lively debate on technology, in anticipation for questions from the floor on our new position.
I think there's a
A
realistic.
realistic conversation that's gonna happen on new position.
Potentially.
So I think at the time, depending upon the question and depending upon how we feel the question can best be answered, I'm happy to defer and if you feel, either of the two of you feel that you would like to
Well, is
weigh
there a
in specifically.
protocol?
Typically, the chair will answer the question, or the chair will ask one of the two selectmen on either side to respond.
Oh, it's interesting, and if you.
The way it works currently is
If
you
you-
usually elbow me on this
Right,
side.
I know how
and
that
Robin is
works.
kicking me simultaneously on
Yeah,
that side.
that's perfect. It's worked perfectly for almost a year
So
now.
we'd follow that protocol.
But
No, so there is, I believe there's an excellent chance that our budget there will be a hold on our budget.
that's fine.
And the question will be asked about the increase in the salary line.
Okay.
And that's for the new position. So
Right,
we
so-
would need to to discuss that.
Yeah, but if you were to watch this committee and how it works, I mean, we work as a team. And so it's rare where one person answers
Right.
any particular
But less is
question.
more at town meeting. So I feel as though somebody should prepare a response. You know, why the extra FTE? What drove the need?
Salary line, job description, drivers. I think we have all of the above.
Well, I mean, we saw one job description that was, we thought, a level low. And have we done a second one?
No, I don't think we necessarily have to have a job description, just an explanation.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to?
Right.
An explanation?
So, you know, we identified a need for a project/program manager.
Right.
We looked at different job descriptions. We then looked at the cost of those FTEs and picked a median point between the high and the low as a budget placeholder. But, you know, most importantly, it's not how did you get to the cost, it's justifying the need. So, and I think the need ties into, you know,
The proof is
ties.
in the pudding. We're
Right.
suffering right now because we
Right,
don't have.
exactly. Well, we are going to need to embark upon a modernization of the town. It's not something that's going to happen in year one.
You could have a person who's going to.
It's something that will happen over time.
Yeah, yes,
And
yes.
you know, everybody here is extremely busy. We're a very lean organization, and we have a need for somebody to manage projects as they come up.
Projects, yes. No, absolutely.
Right.
And it's something that we've talked about and have considered and have sort of done due diligence on since the summertime.
Right, and it's not specifically IT. It's
No,
all
it's not
kinds of
specifically
projects.
IT, that's right.
Right.
We can put them off on document retention and
Right.
storage and retrieval.
And not only that, but a look at the entire physical infrastructure and how we currently house documents and how we currently
No,
retrieve.
no, the
So,
point, yes.
but going back to the genesis of the question is who, I don't think it's necessarily a decision we have to make tonight, who will address that, but I think we will respond like we have had on every item this year.
Yeah.
We have done, I think, a very good job of giving people, anybody who's asked us for explanation, clarity, some due diligence in terms of an issue or an item, and it's never really been one of us that's discussed.
Right, it's
always
never been one of us. And
It's
so
always been
my question was almost procedural. So if someone asks a question and you as chair provide
Answer.
the start the answer.
Answer.
If you don't give the right answer, we'll
We'll-
bug you. There we go, we got it.
We'll elbow you and then like we normally do, and then each of us will, you know, fill in the
Well,
gaps.
he's not really right. Let me tell you.
And
Tell
then
you why.
At the end of it, we'll go, Carl.
Right. And they
You
call and
did
say,
say.
none of them know what they're talking about, so.
So that was it. I just wanted to make sure that because I really do think that we have, our practice has been as a board of 3 people with one, you know, common goal, help the town succeed. And I think that should be carried forward at town meeting if it's allowed.
So my only, you know, so I just think we should go back and look at the blue book and look at the budget again and think about why we did what we did so that we can answer the questions at town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I think that's exactly what people are going to want, whether it's our budget, whether it's specifically for, if you look at our budget year over year, we have a 33 or 30% increase in what we're asking for. It's
gonna be
because
hold.
it really is one particular item.
Right,
Half the front row is going to say hold on
Right.
that because they're going to want more
Well, that's fine,
explanation.
but that's.
Which is great.
That's why we
we're
have the
having
meeting.
it.
so
It's
you should
exactly why
start
we're there.
with, we've increased our salaries.
No, John's getting a cut.
I am taking a big, in 2 weeks.
I still love, Felicia's taking the biggest pay cut.
Felicia is taking a,
How did you
yes.
do that?
It's, you know, x-ray vision. When it comes to another $500,000, yeah. 35 years of practice.
So my only other thought on that particular, it does tie into 10.
It does.
It does,
way.
yeah.
It does.
It does. So we will be prepared. We will have, for the anticipated holes, we will have the explanation, and we will have the ability to allow people to have that conversation. I don't know what type of latitude the moderator is going to allow.
Right.
I think we should
Oh,
be.
that's why, as chair, since you're answering first, you should make sure you have your talking points, because there are key points that we have to.
And I'm sure if
address.
I don't have the right talking points, you'll be able to correct me.
And I'll steal Dave's bell.
I'll send you a cheat sheet.
That sounds like a plan.
That sounds like a plan. You know, that sounds like the way the board normally operates. Bob and I give our opinions, and then Robin explains to us why they're not valid, so. Is
Well,
there any?
I'm hoping that we have a productive town meeting.
It is going to be a very productive town meeting. Once again, we're encouraging, please bring friends, bring neighbors, be there at least at 6:45 so we can begin the meeting at 7 o'clock. We do need a quorum, we do need 174. 175, 174?
Under 75.
We need 175, so please, 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 we're asking you to bring friends and bring your neighbors and make sure that people are there and why necessarily.
And most importantly, if you bring your tablet, download the stuff before you get there.
Thank
Yes,
you again.
yes,
What
yes.
we reminded
Download the
everyone
blue
last
book.
week. Please, if you're downloading everything from the website, please download it prior to coming to Mudge Auditorium, as it will dramatically slow down the
Crash
process
out systems.
and potentially crash the system. But are we going to give Mr. Springett the pleasure of going through the consent items this evening, Mr. Valente, or should we?
There are many.
Do we have any?
None.
None?
I'll take it then.
Oh, that was a softball. That was probably the easiest thing you'll ever have to do. God, you'll be a wily veteran in 2 weeks. Any other items that we need to cover this evening? And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn at exactly 7:8.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for watching.